Going
and mark
live.
these in advance.
Yes.
Are we live?
We're
Are we
live.
alive? We're alive!
We are alive. Hello and welcome to this episode, this video, this live broadcast to YouTube, where I'm Charlie Wyman, and Simon are going to be talking all about presenting. And today's topic is webinars, because a lot of people create really bad webinars, and I think if you're watching this and have been part of a really bad webinar, then you will understand just quite how painful it is to be part of it. So we're going to show you that if you are creating your own webinars, how to not do that, how to not torture your prospects and the people that you most want to talk to. Isn't that right, Simon?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to show them, I'm going to tell them. Because it's a hiding to nothing to start showing people things for a couple of reasons. The first is sod's law is it always goes wrong. But the second is that everybody's circumstances are so different that if I started to say to people, you do it like this and this and this and this and this, a lot of people would just go, but that's different for me. So I'm deliberately being vague about it by just going, here are the principles rather than the application. So we'll see what happens and see if it's useful for people.
And I'm so glad that you said that, because again, I think a lot of people seem to think that, there's a cookie cutter style approach to marketing. There's a cookie cutter style approach to presenting. There's a cookie cutter style approach to pretty much everything. And all these gurus that are out there telling you this is what you should be doing, assuming that the entire audience of people that they're speaking to is in the same situation together, which is never the case. And it's the same with me teaching people how to use LinkedIn. It's like, oh, well, some guru told me that this is the way to do it. It's like, well, it might work for their audience, but it may not work for yours. Like, who are you
Absolutely.
actually talking to? So, yeah, that's a really good point.
It depends on your message, your medium, your audience, your circle. The principles are always the same, but the application of them is always different. Mm-hmm. And that's the bit that people don't always get, because they want us to give them, they always want me to go, give me the PowerPoint template for my slides that works. There ain't one. Even if it worked for me in this room on that day, it's not going to work for you in that room on that day, I'm afraid. Yeah. Webinars are a real case in point, because everybody wants to know, with the COVID lockdown at the moment, everybody always wants to know what is the best way to do a webinar. And I'm afraid there are no rules. There are guidelines, there are principles, there are things you can look at that make a webinar different from a live presentation. You can make it better or you can make it worse, but there are no hard and fast rules. It's all about taking the principles and applying them for your message and your audience. And I can't say this often enough, your message and your audience. Because, and I'm going to freak out the marketer in you here, Charlie, because you're going to go, it's all about the audience. It's all about the audience. You've got to give people what they want. And as a presenter, I'm going, no. You give them the input, you give them the message. You might modify how you deliver it for your audience, but my first integrity is always to the truth of what I am saying, not to what my audience want or need or think they want to hear. And that makes me unpopular in some circumstances, but my integrity is always to the truth of the message, not to the audience.
So this probably explains why you don't like marketing so much. Because in marketing, it's yes, your message is so important, but it's not so much what you want to say, it's what your audience is interested in. So in a marketing context, you always have to focus on who is your audience and what are they interested in, and how you can match up what you want to say with that interest and intrigue, because otherwise you're just not going to get them listening. Whereas when you're presenting, people are going to sign up. You have to give them the incentive, and presenting in one way, Simon's going to kill me for this one, is the easy bit, technically. There's different stages of it. The hard bit in one way is actually getting people onto your webinar. Once you've got people onto your webinar, or rather once you've got people registering for your webinar, you've then got to convince them to show up live. Once they show up live, how do you keep them engaged to the end of your webinar? And then it doesn't end there. Once your webinar is over, how do you follow up with them? And I think that's why a lot of people get so overwhelmed with webinars, because they're like, oh my gosh, there's so many different moving parts around it. And that's why, webinars are such an effective marketing tool when you can do them properly. And we're going to talk not today about how to market your webinar, but we're actually going to talk about the webinar piece, because again, a lot of people come to me and start talking and saying, oh, right, well, I had loads of people register for my webinar. They turned up, but then they all started dropping off like flies within the first 5 to 10 minutes.
That's because your webinar sucked.
Which was going to be the alternative title for this video, but we realised that most people won't actually be searching for that. So that's why the title is a little bit more stiff.
I want to know how many people are Googling the phrase, why is my webinar sucky? I would really want to know what the Google search numbers are for that.
Well, we can find that out.
You do that while I talk. We'll see what happens. The thing that most people forget about a webinar is that it's not a live presentation, and they design their slides and things as though it were a live presentation. Let me give you an example. There's a presentation I run quite often called Bamboo and Oak. It's about confidence. It's about having the guts to stand on stage. And there's one point there when I have the same slide behind me on the big screen behind me for about 20 minutes. Because that's how long it takes to explore what that slide is about. There's some audience interaction work there. There's a couple of stories from me about my children and a whole bunch of other things to help that technique that's on the slide to help it stick in people's heads. There's a great line from my daughter in the story which finishes with, "Seriously, Dad, you were overreacting. The chances of him shooting me in the back were quite small." And I'm going, any story that finishes with a punchline like that, you have to worry. But the point is, it's a 15 or 20 minute single slide. Now, if you're doing that in a webinar, when it's just a slide, there's not a cat in hell's chance of anybody paying attention because they don't have your charisma. As in, they don't have one's charisma. They can't see your face. They can't see what's going on. There is no personality. It is just the slide. So you need to do one of two things, and preferably both. If the slide's going to be up there for a long time, you either need to get the damn slide off there so that the audience have got a fighting chance of being interested because they can see your smiling little face and you increase the charisma, or you change the slide so that something happens much, much, much more often. Anything between 10 and 30 seconds is a good, it's not a rule, but it's a target to aim for. Something happens every few seconds it's an overstatement, it's an oversimplification, but the principle is valid. You need to make it visually much more interesting, much more animated than you necessarily need to make it when you're live. Does that ring bells with the kind of stuff that you're doing?
Oh, absolutely. And what Simon was just saying does not mean bullet point after bullet point after bullet point, full of slide with lots of technical information, followed by slide with lots of features, followed by slide with many more bullet points as well. Again, I used to work in very, very technical industries where you just get, sort of punched in the face with technical information, features and all of the information about the technology. But I think, as we all say in marketing, it's not about the technology. It's not about what's, I think Simon's presentation that I've seen before in the past is, it's not about what's in the box. It's what the box does for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are various, if you've got really heavy duty tech stuff that you need to give people, the best way of doing it, obviously, is not a presentation or a webinar. And given COVID, we've got no choices, but the best way to do it is a piece of hard copy paper. That the research is very clear that if you want people to remember the detailed facts, that's the best way to do it. So if you're stuck with webinars, the best thing to do is to have them download a PDF workbook before the webinar starts. Don't have the answers in the damn workbook, otherwise they'll just start to read the workbook and they'll not listen to you and they'll not take anything in either, because people just flip through workbooks. So what you do is you have a workbook. It's a bit like those old school books where you had to. So I've just been learning Spanish this morning, and what I got was fill in the blanks.
It's like Mad Libs, isn't it?
Yeah. You give them something that goes, fill in what. The sentence starts and then there's a bit on the end where you have to put in the right conjugation of the verb. That's the kind of thing that you need to be doing in these workbooks so that people have got to read the sentence, listen to what you're saying, and then fill in. So you might give them blank bullet points to jot things down, or you might give them a diagram to annotate or something. But the point is that they are physically doing it while you are delivering the webinar or whatever it is that you happen to be doing. But to go back to your point about bullet points, funny you should do that, because only a week ago or so I wrote quite a really popular blog about what to do. Blog instead of what to do instead of bullet points. And there's a whole bunch of things you can do. You can actually, if you really do need bullet points on your webinars, hint, you don't. But if you think you do, you can make those bullet points look more interesting. So one of the things I've done recently is make my bullet points into text boxes and edit them so that they look like post-it notes, and then stick the post-it notes randomly on the screen. It's much more interesting than just your traditional bullet point list. And literally today, I've just been working on how to make your webinar bullet point stuff more interactive, because you can make anything on your slide deck, you can put a hyperlink in it, which means you don't have to start on slide 1, go to slide 2, slide 3, slide 4, slide 5. Is anyone bored yet? Slide 6, slide 7.
You tweeted about that the other day. I'm sure I saw a tweet about...
Yeah, just tweeted about it this morning. Literally just tweeted about it this morning. Yeah. So if you get to slide 7, you then say to your audience, I've got 3 options for you. What do you want to know next? And you put the 3 options on the screen, and you have them just vote in the chat room, or you have a poll if you're using Zoom or something. They tell you which of those 3 options it is that you're more interested in. And because you've got a hyperlink in your slide, you can then click on wherever it is in that slide. So if it's a text box that says go to place 1 or place 2 or place 3, you click on that text box, it jumps over all the intervening slides and goes to exactly where in your slide deck your audience has said they want to go. It means it's a bit hard work sometimes, because it means that you create... So I've just done one where I've got 3 storylines through a presentation. I'm going to ask the audience which one they're interested in. 2/3 of my slides will never get shown because they're going to jump. But it does mean that the audience gets to choose what's going on in the presentation, and it makes it so much more interactive. It looks...
You don't know who's going to be in the room. So when you put out your webinar to the world, you have no control. Well, very little control as to who's actually joining you. So in this way, you can customize it depending on who the audience is at the time and what they want to look at.
Yeah, because with the best one in the world, you can say to people, this is not a beginner's webinar, and you know who's going to turn up, don't you? Mm-hmm. It's all, and they're going to go, but this is too complicated for me, in which case you just go, all right, let's jump over. They're all the boring slides, all the interesting slides, sorry, and you go to the boring, do this, do this, do this, and do this, the hand-holding slides, the click this button slides that they seem to need quite often. Or even if you don't skip out slides, you give people a choice about what order you do things in. And I know that sounds ridiculously simple. Charlie, your brain is too small for this, but trust me, you're going to use this technique as they get older. You're going to go, do you want to tidy your bedroom before dinner or after dinner? And they think they've got control because they're choosing when they tidy their bedroom. Well, I don't care whether my daughter tidied her bedroom before or after dinner, as long as she tidied her down to bedroom. So do the same thing in webinars. I don't care whether I show part 1, 2, and 3 in what order, it doesn't matter sometimes, but giving the audience the feeling that they're in control, so they choose to skip over 1 and go to 2, and then go back to point 1 and then skip on to point 3, it makes them much, much, much more engaged.
Keep coming. I was doing some sales training this morning around social selling. It's exactly the same in social selling. The more you can make the person that you're speaking to in control of the conversation, or at least feel like they're in control of the conversation, the easier it will be, and the more successful that conversation will be as well. So control is a really, really good point. And I think as well, like, especially with COVID and the fact that everybody is doing webinars at the moment, or joining webinars or running webinars, what have you. I think the bar was quite low to start with. I think people were a lot more accepting for, let's say, average webinars, and now the bar has been raised because people's patience and tolerance for a certain amount of information and also how they spend their time as well. It's like before, we'd quite happily go to a networking event which took up half our time with travel, being there, doing that. Like with webinars, especially when we're all at home, stuck at home, and we're logging onto webinars, you can do things much more efficiently. But I think everybody's got Zoom fatigue now, so they're prioritizing what they do and don't spend their time with.
I want to pick up on that word efficient. You're not wrong, but I just want to challenge the word efficient, because a lot of people think that efficient means multitasking.
Good point, because you've got to engage, like you just said, engage them with the webinar and what you're doing. But I think one of the things that works best for me is whenever I run a webinar, I always say right at the very start, right, close down your email, put your phone away, grab a pen and paper, and pay attention.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
you've signed up to this webinar for a reason. So like, don't get distracted doing lots of other things as well.
Even now, right? I'm just going to, okay, I'm still talking to you, but I've actually got Facebook in front of the screen with me now. And I just did another one, and oh look, my emails are in front of this. Oh, actually, there's one that I need to reply to, and I'll just listen to Charlie in my ears while I just type away on my. It doesn't work like that. You can't multitask.
No.
The only times you can multitask is if the thing that you're doing is so ingrained into your subconscious you don't need to think about doing it. And so, for example, you can drive a car and actually, no, you can't. The research is clear on that. If you do anything else other than drive a car, your quality of driving goes down as well. But so I can walk and talk at the same time. Yeah. I don't make sense, but I can walk and talk at the same time. But there's a couple of things you can do, even in the webinar thing with your slides, to do that, which is not only to have what we call that social contract at the beginning, where you say, look, my expectations are pen and paper, phone off, pay attention, ask questions, don't be racist in the chat, that kind of stuff. But the other thing that you can do is not give information into media. So the worst thing you can do in any presentation is have your stuff on the screen and just read the damn stuff. Right? It is particularly painful to see that done in webinars, because it means that I can slip onto my Gmail and start reading my emails and think that I'm still listening to the webinar because you're reading your slides to me. Now, that doesn't work. You can't pay attention. You can't remember things. You screw up your emails at the same time. The research is very, very clear about cognitive overload, but I think I can do it. So a dirty trick from a presenter's point of view is not to script out their slides and use phrases like, as you can see from the graph, and then put a graph on the screen, but don't even tell them what the results of the graph are. Don't even say to them, as you can see from the graph, the relationship is positive. Say to them, as you can see from the graph, the results are self-evident, or the results are very clear. And that means that anybody who wants to know what those results are has got to come back to the slides and freaking well pay attention to what it is that you are showing them. So you only give them your verbal presentation only, and I fail on.
Do the sound for the heavy metal stuff. That was for the comedy club, but I did the light. Oh no, I was more. Anyway, we digress. But for the ravers, it was the lights. I can't imagine trying to do both of them at the same time. That would have been insane.
And video. It was an absolute picking nightmare.
Yes.
But the thing that other people always forget is not only to rehearse the tech, but check your broadband speeds, because most of us working from home at the moment, our broadbands are optimized for download, because that's what the vast majority of us do. We play games, we stream videos and that kind of jazz. We do what we're doing now, which is to talk to people. Our broadbands are optimized for download. But if you're webinar broadcasting, you also need a damn good upload speed. So if you can get away from Wi-Fi and you can hardwire your thing, so much the better. If you're in the city centre, so much the better. I'm not saying you should buy a house in the city centre just to be able to do it, but it's not a bad shout to at the very least check it. And you know what? Check it at the same time of day, same day of the week. Because I've seen people go, yeah, my upload broadband speeds are phenomenal. And you go, when did you check it? I checked it when I got out of bed this morning. What time did you get out of bed? I got out of bed at 6:30. Right, and you're now trying to broadcast at 11:30 in the morning. Well, funnily enough, between 6:30 and 11:30, the rest of the neighbourhood has got up.
Yeah.
And everybody else is contending for the contention ratios for your upload speeds are just appalling, and you're stammering and stuttering. It may be worth buying just a £25 a month little portable Wi-Fi so that you're the only person on that Wi-Fi or something, just to make sure that your upload speeds are as strong as other people's download speeds.
Yeah, and if you're with Virgin Internet, just go cry in a corner and make sure you've got an alternative backup plan.
Yeah, I'm on Virgin as well, and 95% of the time they're great, but 5% of the time, particularly at the beginning of the lockdown, I would just lose my broadband for an hour at a time. Hence me having bought a portable Wi-Fi so that I could continue to work.
Oh, there you go. So we've been talking about for a while. There was two things that I wanted to cover. One of them was what we were talking about before, which was some research that you'd read around the difference between sort of showing your face on screen while you're doing a webinar versus just showing slides, because I know that there's a lot of people that ask these questions. I know my personal experience of this is that my conversions and engagement is always so much higher when I show my face and I'm more present than the slides. So that's always worked for me personally. What's the research say?
The research says that if you are teaching, so if you're trying to get technical information over to people, showing your face does not help. If you're trying to get over stuff, this is exactly what you'd expect, right? If you're showing technical stuff, showing your face does not help, and there's a little bit of argument that says that it actually detracts, because your audience is now trying to what they call dual channel. They're trying to look at the technical stuff. And so if you're trying to have an emotional thing with it, where you're having a conversation with people, a personal relationship, then you need to show your face, and not, and I'm extrapolating a little bit beyond the research at this point, and not just your face tucked away in the corner with a really boring slide. So what you want to do is become comfortable technologically with flipping between full screen and of your head and full screen of the slide with your head tucked away in the corner. There's dozens and dozens of people's software that will help you do that. I use Ecamm because I'm on a Mac. I think you're on a Mac as well, are you, Charlie? Is that right? Yeah. But there's dozens of different pieces of software that will do it. It's just a question of setting it up in advance so that Command 2 is your screen share and commands showing your slides, and then Command 3 is a close-up of your face, and Command 4 is your face at a distance, or whatever it is, just so that you can shift between the two. And even better, if you've got a second camera set at an angle. So what I've done in the past sometimes is I've put my iPhone here, connect it to the main computer, and then just flip between two cameras. So I've got slides, I've got myself face on, and I've got a camera looking at me from the side, even if it's just your iPhone, just to give a bit of variation and a bit of personal interaction with people.
Yeah, just make it a little bit more interesting.
Yeah. It's exactly what you expect it to be. Get your face out of the way for the technical stuff and bring your face back in for the emotional stuff.
Brilliant. And I thought a good way to recap what we've talked about is just to sort of summarize what are the major mistakes that people are making, because we can sort of share lots of information and tips and things like that about how to improve your webinars. But if you can identify those mistakes, you can just tick those off and make sure that you're not making them in your next webinar. So Simon, mistake number 1, what would you say it is?
Mistake number 1 is forgetting that it's different online. That's it. It is different online, and therefore you have to do more, you have to animate the slides more, and you have to animate yourself more, you have to be more energetic. So just forgetting that online is different from live to live. And the second thing is forgetting to rehearse and forgetting to check your tech. So the principles are really simple, really, really simple. The application of those things is much more complicated, but the principles are dead easy.
And those principles, should we recap those principles?
It's different online, and rehearse the freaking thing. How many times do I have to say them? I'll just over and over and over and over.
Mistakes and
so do more, move more, animate more, show more, flip between more, be more interesting. And there's something I was telling you about the other day as a parting shot. If you're going to just talking to a slide, talk to a slide as though you were reading a bedtime story to a toddler, so that your energy levels are up and you're a bit more excited. So don't just go, as you can see in the diagram, A is bigger than B, B is bigger than C, therefore A must be bigger than C, because nobody is going to engage with that. You go, as you can see in the diagram, A is bigger than B, B is bigger than C, which means A must be bigger than C. You're going to feel like a complete prawn, but from the audience's perspective, it just makes you that bit more interesting and a bit more engageable, because the camera sucks the life out of everything.
And on that, I'm going to share another principle and mistake that I've made in the past, and also I see a lot of people do it as well, is that don't cram too much stuff in your diary. So if you are going to run a webinar, the more interactive and the more energetic you are going to be, these things use up a lot of energy. So make sure that you have time before you do the webinar, as well as after, before you start doing something else, just to kind of decompress, just to, get that energy back. So before you do it, build up that energy for yourself, shake it out as you would do if you're speaking on stage, she says, with lots of experience. But yeah, at the end of it as well, it is exhausting. So don't jump straight into a, sort of prospecting call. Don't jump straight into another big project, but give yourself that time to, just breathe and reflect on what happened as well.
Parting shot then. Consider bringing the cavalry in and getting someone to come in with you. So, for example, I've got a 2-day workshop on Monday and Tuesday of next week. Dear God, help the participants. But I'm not doing it on my own. Despite all the tricks that I've got, I'm bringing somebody else in, and I'm doing it with somebody. Karim is coming in from Egypt, just to give a different face every now and again. It also, while the audience is concentrating on Karim's pretty little face, it also means that I've got that opportunity just to go, and then wind myself back up for my next session, because it is absolutely knackering.
I've stopped doing full day workshops. I just refuse to do them online because I think I haven't quite cracked that nut of making it engaging enough to keep people occupied. Plus, I don't want people's experience of an all-day event to just be draining. But the key about getting a couple of other people or like one of the people involved is a really good one, because then that would negate that and help.
We spent 4 days planning these 4 solid days, the two of us. So that's 8-person days planning this 2-day thing to make it interactive. We've got all kinds of magic wizardry going on. So we're using, for example, software called Poll Everywhere, so that people brilliant. They can write their cloud stuff, they can write their opinions over here, and it magically appears on the slide deck over here and stuff like that. Anything to make it interactive. We've even rigged up a camera over a table so that I can roll dice, and people can watch what the dice come out as and then respond to the numbers of the dice, almost as though I'm in the room. It's not, obviously it's not, but it's a lot more than just your bog standard chalk and talk stuff. It has to be.
Brilliant. So if you're watching this and you're just thinking, right, I need to deliver lots of, half day, full day, or even multi-day online workshops, then Simon is the guy that you need to be speaking to about how to make them more engaging and how to make sure that your participants actually want more at the end of it, rather than just want to bang their head against a brick wall because they're so exhausted and unengaged with it all.
Can we change how to make them better to the phrase how to make them less bad?
How to make them less bad, yes.
How to make them less bad.
How to make them less bad, or suck less, which is another thing. I know. So I realised that we've now been speaking for nearly 35 minutes. But so it's been absolutely great. For anybody watching this for the first time, we did a live last Friday, which was all about pitching yourself at networking events. So how do you pitch yourself and present yourself so that people remember you? So if you've not yet watched that, go back and watch that. And then join us again next time, Friday, every week, Friday for the next few weeks at 11:30.
Live.
Oh. I know, live on YouTube. It's a bit of an experiment, this, but the videos will also be available on my website. So if you just go to charlieweinman.com, and all of the videos will be available there too. All right then.
Live. What could possibly go wrong?
I think we seem to be doing okay so far.
Right. See you next week then, Charlie.
See you next week. Ciao for now.